Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. We actually did get some good news yesterday, as expected from the NBA, that the Board of Governors have elected to come to a solution and give us the return to play format. Now, in this format, 22 teams will gather in Orlando, and you will have 8 regular season games, then play in a game between the 8 and 9 seed if there's less than a 4-game differential, and from there you will have 16 playoff teams as usual, 8 in the East, 8 in the West. So we knew this was coming, and we got some more details on it yesterday, and it still has to be improved by the NBA Players Association, but it is expected to do so because Adam Silver did actually get some input from players over the last couple weeks, as he did set up from some conference calls. And it's interesting to compare because you do feel like the relationship of the owners and the commissioner and the players in the NBA is so smooth when you compare it to the other 4 major 3 sports across the United States, especially right now when you look at the current state of Major League Baseball and their relationship between Rob Manfred, the Players Association, all that stuff. The NFL relationships, I think they've improved over the last couple of years, but it hasn't really been anything special or anything you could really compare to the NBA. And even in hockey, we haven't seen a strike before in the last 25 years. So hockey does have its act together, but they've had some history. Here's what you need to know about in terms of what was passed by the NBA owners and how they plan on this planning out. It looks like training camp will start on June 30th. Then July 7th, everyone will travel to Orlando, and the 2019-2020 season will resume on July 31st. We told you what the format is in regards to next season and offseason and free agency, which is going to start on October 18th. And that's really interesting because usually we are used to the NBA dominating the summer with free agency. Now you will have football as it's competing with underway if that does start on time, and NBA free agency is just going to be mixing and maxing with the NFL season, with the MLB season if it happens, and maybe even the NHL season if that happens as well, but that usually does happen. And then for the 2021 season, the league right now is targeting a November 10th training camp date and December 1st for opening night. This is a quick turnaround of it's only 2.5 months for the teams that played in the NBA Finals. And going back to the free agency, could you guys imagine if during the middle of an NFL football Sunday, you get a report or just something leaks out on Twitter that a big-time free agent signs with a new team? It's definitely going to be something that takes a lot of getting used to, but once again, with these crazy times that have been going on, it's not like you could really, I don't even want to say expect anything different, but it's not like you could, really complain or say anything about it. It's just one of those things where you kind of just have to move on and deal with it when you really do consider the current circumstances of what is going on in today's world. We all thought that the 2020-2021 season would start on Christmas Day or at least toward the end of December, but the league is once again targeting a December 1st date, and you will be competing with the NFL throughout December and January, and then you have the Super Bowl and the season done in February. So 2 more months of your season competing with the NFL, then it ends. So when we look at all this stuff, if I was running the NBA personally, and it's easy for me to say this on my podcast because I don't really have to incorporate the finances into the equation, but personally speaking, I would have gone with just the top 8 seeds in the East and the top 8 seeds in the West and started the playoffs. And they actually elected not to do that. A lot of it has to do with money, and there will have to be some more money made after how much money was lost after the coronavirus outbreak. So now the NBA actually decides that they're going to go to 22 teams. And the only legit issue I have here is the play-in games and the race for the 8th seed. But it is clear that the league not only wants to make more money, but they want Zion in, they want maybe Dame Lillard in, and they want to create that big game feel with the play-in game. And that has been my point of contention with all this, is that with all these circumstances and who knows what we can really predict with all the safety and possible health concerns with the coronavirus. However, I thought, though, that the safest thing would be just the current format. But, well, the NBA wanted to open up and go to 22 teams, as you have other owners to please as well. and you want to make some more money. So you come back, you play your 8 regular season games, you have a play-in game between the 8 and 9 seed once again if the difference between them is 4 games or less, and then we start the postseason. But the only small criticism, and before I go into this, I just wanted to say one other thing. I'm just happy we have basketball back. Just because I'm making these small critiques on the way the playoff bracket was set up, like that doesn't mean I'm not gonna watch. I'm just saying if I was going to do it, this would be the way I'd set it up. And obviously, it's the middle of a pandemic. I'm sure the NBA has their reasons for why they set it up. But I'm just saying the way I look at it and the way I see it, this would be the way I would set it up. And the way I look at it, I just don't see the sense in having the 8 regular season games and then having a play-in game for the 8 seed, because it could get messy and it may not be a good look, especially if a team is 3 or 4 games up, just having to win the one play-in game to get in, and if they were to lose, and they were eliminated, that doesn't really make much sense to me. If you're going to have a regular season, I don't see why you need a play-in game, but apparently the league does not agree, and you would think that they just want to create that big game feel. I'm okay with playing 8 regular season games because you have to get the rust out, and there could be some competitive aspects to it because of seeding, and especially if you're trying to sneak into the playoffs. So that is where we are in the NBA, and I will say it definitely is a step in the right direction. We need to continue to see where the numbers go with the coronavirus in this country, and we also need to see how exactly the NBA is going to respond when a player does get the coronavirus. And I said when because it's just kind of inevitable. The thing just spreads so quickly, and ideally, yes, we want to live in a world where someone and no one gets it, where no one throughout the whole, NBA gets it when they're in Orlando during this Disney plan. But at the same time, there is still a very good chance that it is going to happen. We know one player, according to Adam Silver, is not going to shut down the whole league like it did with Rudy Gobert. But with that being said, how many becomes too many in the NBA eyes? And what happens if you're in a playoff series and 6 or 7 players on one team get it and it starts to spread within a locker room? You guys know there's no real debate here. You're not going to let them play, and they're going to have to go into isolation for 2 weeks. And how many players are going to feel comfortable getting back on a basketball court and doing that, even though it isn't a chase for an NBA championship? There are things we can talk about and things we could speculate, but we won't see how the sports world is going to handle this when multiple cases of the coronavirus happen and when the sports are in action. 3 or 4 players I was actually reading the other day at Alabama have tested positive for the coronavirus over the last couple of weeks since they got back. Oklahoma State or Oregon State, one of those 2 schools, the Orange with the O, had a linebacker that tested positive in their program. And we will have to see how the sports world will react when it does happen to players while the sports are going on, and when you have to step in and say to yourself, well, hold on, we need to take a step back. The question now is, do you unfortunately see the sport shut down again? That is what you don't want to see, and we obviously hope that that is not the case, but that is also a big thing that we're going to have to consider and have to wait and see how the individual leagues do respond if it does happen. And, we've only really spoken about the 4 major sports, but also college sports. It's looking like hopefully we're going to have a college football season. I know USC actually just announced this week that their students will be in session the first week of the fall semester. So let's see if that USC-Alabama Week 1 game will happen. So going back to the NBA, that is the format that the league did lay out. And when we look at the voting, every single team besides one actually said yes and voted yes in favor of this plan. And that one team who voted no was the Portland Trail Blazers. And now it is not because they didn't want to play, but according to Woj, the Blazers are eager to resume the season, but chose to vote no because the franchise believed there were more competitive and innovative formats on the table, including those that address the 2020 NBA draft lottery odds based on regular season game results in Orlando. And when you saw that tweet from Woj, the first thing you say to yourself is, what? It doesn't make sense to me, because when you look at the other innovative formats that the league was considering, because Portland would be the 9 seed, why wouldn't they just want to make it easy for themselves, stay in that 9 seed, play the 8 regular season games? All they would have to do is make it to that play-in game. And then I feel like when you're Portland and you have players as talented and as clutch as Lillard and McCollum, you're going to have a way to get the job done. But it just didn't make sense to me. Did they maybe want to go to the 20-team format and then the lottery part based on the amount of regular season games you play? Like, how do you value 8 games? Was there a way you wanted to get rewarded in the lottery? Because then if you make it, you won't even have to worry, because then you will already be in the lottery. Would they somehow want to create an incentive based on record if you were in that initial group, that when the season paused, you wouldn't have to be going to the postseason, even if you do somehow find your way into the playoffs? Were they maybe trying to come up with a format that could benefit them if they were the 9 seed and won the play-in game and still get a lottery pick? So the bottom line is, we don't really know why exactly they voted no. There was just a bunch of confusion there. According to Chris Haynes of Yahoo Sports, it was clarified and said Portland preferred a 20-team return-to-play format, thus one of the reasons why they voted no to the 22-team format. So the 20-team format, for my understanding, was the group stage format. I think this current format of 22 benefits the Blazers more simply to get into the playoffs, because Portland, when fully healthy now, has Dame and CJ, and Nurkic is back healthy. Zach Collins is back healthy. You have Carmelo already there. You have Hassan Whiteside already there. And you have all those guys have been dealing with injury problems with the Blazers this season. And all you have to do right now is stay where you are in that 9 seed, or maybe move up to the 8 seed, and you will have a good path to possibly make the playoffs. If you look at the teams that are in the chase for that 8 seed, and Portland is one of those teams in that group, you do feel like when they are fully healthy, they're better than Memphis. You feel like when they're fully healthy, they're better than New Orleans and the Kings probably, and the Spurs and the Suns. They've just had their fair share of health problems so far this season. So I think this format is very fair to Portland, but from what was gathered from Chris Haynes, they voted no, and they wanted the 20-team format, which would have been the World Cup group stage format. So the only thing you could really think of, and probably why Portland thought this, and maybe why they thought it was a good idea so their players, and I'm not buying it, is because they wanted to, I'm not buying that they wanted to try this new innovative idea. I think the players thought, with how much time they've been banged up and decimated by injuries, that even after this 3-4 month layoff, they would have a group that's good to go and get the best version of themselves come playoff time. Maybe they can mimic the team from last year that, what many people forget, blew all those games against the Golden State Warriors. They had a chance late to win a bunch of those games and literally got swept, blew every single one of them. So if you divide them into a group stage play where you would take the best 2 teams of the 4 groups that maybe Portland thought they'd maybe be one of the top 2 teams in their group and go versus the other 7 teams in the playoffs, that's all I could really chalk it up. It is very weird to me that Portland voted no, where I do believe the 22-team format that is going to be implemented really does benefit the Portland Trailblazers. You also think this format is probably the easiest way for the league to get either Dame or Zion into the first round, and you do know most likely that's going to be against LeBron and the Lakers. So my question for you guys is, do you guys have any criticism about the NBA's plan to return, or do you just say, basketball is basketball, and I'm just happy to have it back?